Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome to lecture 33 of this course on machine learning for art system science. We are currently in module 4. In fact, this is the last module of module 4 where we are discussing the various applications of machine learning in earth observation systems. The topic of this lecture is deep domain adaptation for remote sensing. In this lecture we are going to discuss various models and concepts related to domain adaptations. Next we will see some applications of remote sensing where domain adaptation becomes important, and we will also see how the domain adaptation models can be tailored to such applications. So first of all, why do we need domain adaptation in art sciences? So like now when we capture the images of a particular region using the earth observation systems, we have already discussed about different kinds of earth observation systems, about the different imaging technologies they may employ and so on. Now when the particular region is being captured by different devices or different kinds of sensors, now the regions may look very different at different times. By times I mean the times in a day. Like in the morning it may look one it may look in a particular way, in the afternoon or midday it may look in another way, in the night it will be different and so on. So this happens due to the various shadows that are present, the light, also the position of the relative position of the sensor corresponding to the object. So like all these are factors which make sure or which cause the images of the same region captured by different sensors or even the same sensor at different times of the day different from each other. Additionally, like over time the target region itself may change. Say for example, if it is an agricultural region, when it is barren, that is before the crop cultivation or just after the seeds have been planted, it will look in one way, but when the crops mature, the region will look very different, especially when viewed from the top. Then there may be a forested region which gradually gets deforested. As a result, the original or the early images of that region may look very different from the later images after deforestation. Similarly for urbanization also. So this is to say that in the first case it's the target remains the same, but it may look different in different circumstances. In this case we are saying that the target itself may change over time. Also we may develop the model for some remote sensing purpose and train it with data from one part of the world, but that model may not work in another part of the world because the targets may look different there. Say for example, we have in some of our earlier lectures we have talked about LULC changes, we have talked about building detections in cities and so on. Now suppose I train a model for detecting buildings in a city. Now I may train it on some cities which may be developed according to a particular urban plan. Now suppose we deploy that same model on another city where the urban plan is significantly different. Let us say one has mostly tall high-rise buildings, the other has short buildings which or maybe less tall buildings which span a wider area and so on. So in that case the buildings may look very different in the two cases, and the building and model to detect buildings in the first case may not work that well in the second case. Apart from that, there may also be variations due to the different sensor types, the sensing technology, or we have discussed about the different wavelengths at which the images can be captured. So all these are issues. Now, like since there is so much variation, it is very unlikely that the same model is going to work in all the different cases. Like as I said, suppose I build an LULC classifier or a building detector and so on, and I train it using the data from one part of the world. Like there is no guarantee that it is going to work in other parts of the world or even at other times in the same region. So, in that case, should we always keep on building separate and new model? So, the answer is no, and this is possible because of the idea of this concept known as domain adaptation. So, domain adaptation, what it says is that let us say that there are two sources of data, or let us say two domains of data, let us say the source domain and the target domain. So, if you look at this image, so like the data the blue data points, let us say they have come from one particular source, and red data points, they have come from let us say they belong to the target domain. So, as you can see that there is a difference in the like alignment of the data, that is it seems that the source domain and the target domain, they are characterized by different hyperplanes. Now, of course, for for viewing we have showed it in 3 dimensions, but in general such data will of course be extremely high dimensional that we cannot visualize, but the basic concept remains unchanged. So, what is the idea? The idea is that we will match or we will map the source domain to the target domain in such a way that the variance or the second order statistics are preserved. That is to say, let us say the covariance matrix of the features in the source domain is CS, and that in the target domain is CT. So, the covariance matrix, as we have discussed earlier also, they basically encode the second order statistics, the covariances between pairs of features. So, these, let us say, like each point which you are seeing here is a point in the feature space. So, they will have certain features. Yes, and now the aim is that I will like this CS, the covariance matrix of the source domain, we will map to a CS hat, which should be in the as close to the covariance matrix of the target domain, and that kind of transformation is to be achieved by this kind of like pre-multiplying and post-multiplying by the same matrix A. Okay. So, what is this is expected to achieve is basically the idea is that the source data points are being which are currently in this blue plane, they are being projected onto this red plane of the target, so that every source point will have a corresponding transformed point in the target domain. However, this has to be done this this kind of projection obviously cannot be just like random projection. Some it has the salient properties of the source domain and the target domain, they need to be maintained. So, that is achieved by making sure that that is basically trying to match the second order statistics. So, I am the claim here is that of course this is just the basic principle, but if you look at the paper by San, Feng and Senko in 2016, this is known as CORAL, or which stands for correlational alignment. This has been mathematically proved that if this kind of a transformation is done, then then certain properties of the source domain is going to be preserved even after the transformation. So, this is how the algorithm works. As you can see, it's a really straightforward algorithm. You just have the CS, the covariance matrix of the source domain, and we have CT, the covariance matrix of the target domain, and you just carry out this kind of transformation of both the that is the DS stands for the data points in the source domain. So, you just do this kind of matrix multiplication and you get the mapped source or the projection of the source domain, and then you can once you have mapped all the source data points into the target domain, then whatever model you want to learn, you can learn it in that transformed source domain. Now this can also be achieved with the help of deep learning. So there is deep coral. Just for illustration purposes, let us say that the source data is looks like this and the target data looks like this. So as you can see, it's the same things, the same objects, but seen in a different way. In this case, each of the source images, each of them focus on only one single object, but here that object is present along with certain background also. So it's the same source. I mean the source and target are they are basically the same. However, the target has certain transformation, namely the addition of the background. So so they suggest this kind of a deep learning architecture. The basic idea is that you do not have to learn separate models for the source domain and the target domain. If you learn a model for the source domain, you can actually share most of its weights with the target domain also. So we can say that we are building two neural networks, one for the source domain and the one for the target domain. Now the neural net, almost all layers of the neural network will share their weights, except that we will have apart from the usual classification loss, which is this is of course an object classification problem, so there will be a classification loss. Apart from that, an additional loss function will be added, that is called the coral loss, and this coral loss is actually nothing but the difference between the covariances of the different features. The same thing that was done here. So here also we tried to minimize the difference between the covariance matrices of the transformed of the target domain and the transformed source domain. Here also we want to do pretty much the same thing. So that thing is this term is now included as a loss function. So basically the weights of this neural network will be learnt in such a way that not only improves the classification but also helps in alignment of the these two domains. And alignment in what sense? Alignment as discussed in terms of covariance matrix. So let us say this was initially the source domain and target domain were misaligned. Now in two steps we align them to the same domain. So we can say that here the correlation, the original correlation which was present in the source domain, that is destroyed, and then next the projection happens where the original data points, they are projected into the target domain according to this particular property. Now let us see a few applications of this. So let us first discuss this paper, Unsupervised Adversarial Domain Adaptation Network for Image Segmentation. So image segmentation we have discussed earlier. We have seen its various applications in remote sensing and earth system sciences. So here the idea is quite straightforward. They have developed a model that is an image segmentation model for one region or one city, and now they want to deploy that to another target region, which might be another city, or which so it may have the buildings there may have different characteristics and so on. So for that they the image segmentation approach that they use is called deep lab. This is also a deep learning based image segmentation, somewhat similar to the image segmentation models which we have already discussed along the lines of UNet and so on. So as you can see, this is frozen, that is to say here the same thing is this might be trained in the source domain, but it will be used in the target domain without any further changes. So once that is done, we will get certain features from both of these domains. Next we will have something known as a curve feature extractor, that is so basically what it is doing is from the it's basically calculating the covariance among the different features, as was discussed in the in case of this coral, and then using the machine learning the deep learning framework called conditional GANs, the mapping is done from the source domain to the target domain. So GAN is a generative adversarial network. It's a state of the art topic or a state of the art model in deep learning. So we have not discussed this in great detail earlier. So roughly this has a generator component and a discriminator component. The aim is that we will take an image or we will take some kind of an input, and then it will pass it into a generator neural network. The generator neural network will transform it into a data from a then there will be a discriminator component which will try to classify whether the generated data point whether it is generated by the generator or does it come from a particular data set that has been on which the discriminator has been trained. So and this if the discriminator is able to successfully understand that or is successfully able to separate the generated images and the dataset images, that means the generator needs to improve. The generator's task in this case is to produce samples which are near identical to the dataset in like we are talking about. So, and it will just keep testing its ability to do that against the discriminator. The aim of the generator is to fool the discriminator, and it will keep on training and retraining itself until it is able to fool the generator, the discriminator. That is, the discriminator given a particular data point is unable to say whether it has been generated by the or it has been synthesized by the generator or it has just been taken from the data set. So in this case also the same idea is used. The generator function in this case takes an image of the from the source domain and tries to map it to the target domain, and then there is a discriminator which supervises how good this mapping has been by taking every image and classifying it whether it belongs to the target domain or it is merely a transformed from the source image. And that generator will keep on training and retraining itself until it is able to fool the discriminator. When the discriminator is fooled, that basically means that the generator can now transform any source image into the target domain, so that the after transformation the source image looks near identical to any target domain image. I mean, it will not there will not be a one-to-one mapping. That is not desirable also. That is to say, one image from the source domain will not be mapped to another image of the target domain, but rather it will be transformed in such a way that there will be no way to say that this does not actually belong to the target domain. It has merely been obtained through transformations. So this concept of generative adversarial networks, this is very cleverly used here in the task of domain adaptation. So here you can see the results. So these are some images from of some remote sensing over a particular city in Germany. So that is the as you can see here, it has a particular structure, and now this is the target domain. So so initially the model is trained on source domain, then it is deployed on target domain 1, which is a different part of the same city, and then it is deployed on target domain 2, which is a different city. Now this is one application of, namely, image segmentation. Now let us come to another paper which focuses on a different application. So here the aim is improving land cover segmentation across satellites using domain adaptation. Here the key word is across satellites. In this case it might have been from the same satellite but over two different cities. In this case we are talking about across satellites, that is, the two satellites may use different sensing technology and so on. So land use and land cover mapping is essential to various fields of study such as forestry, agriculture and urban management. Generally, Earth observation satellites facilitate and accelerate the mapping process. Subsequently, deep learning methods have been proven to be excellent in automating the mapping via semantic image segmentation. However, because deep neural networks require large amounts of labeled data, it is not easy to exploit the full potential of satellite imagery because of the absence of labeled data. I mean, data is present in plentiful, but what about the labels? Additionally, land cover tends to differ in appearance from one region to another. Therefore, having labeled data from one location does not necessarily help map others. Furthermore, satellite images come in various multispectral bands in which range from RGB to over 12 bands. In this study, our aim is to use domain adaptation to solve the aforementioned problems. We applied a well-performing DA approach on the deep globe land cover dataset. So, I guess in one of our lectures about like segmentation, we have talked about this deep globe dataset. So, like where they have like basically land images from different parts of the world, and it defines certain challenges like identifying different land covers, extracting the road and water bodies, and so on. Like land cover datasets as well as datasets that we built using RGB images from Sentinel-2, WorldView-2 and Pleiades 1B satellites with Corine land cover as ground truth levels. The experiment revealed significant improvements over the results obtained without DA. In some cases, an improvement over 20% mean intersection over union was obtained. Sometimes our model manages to correct errors in the ground truth levels also. So, like basically this is the approach. So, like there is in this case, so unlike here if you can see, the segmentation takes place. First the segmentation takes place and then the mapping takes place. That is, it's really the segmented image which is mapped from the source domain to the target domain. In this case, it's the opposite. Here the translation happens first and only then we put it to the segmented image. So, like the different image patches that are extracted, they are of different sizes in this case, depending on which satellite is being used. Now, and the architecture is there is this domain translation. This is done again using a generative adversarial network which we discussed just now, and after that using the pretty much the same idea, that is the source domain images are mapped to the target domain images in such a way that the discriminator is unable to distinguish between them. So, that is the translation part, and then this translated data, they are passed on to the segmenter, which is based on the concept of ResNet, that is basically a network with residuals with skip connections and so on, and finally we get the the segmented image. So, like they have this DM, which stands for basically the domain discriminator, which is like given any image, it informs like which domain it belongs to the source domain or the target domain. So, so in this case, the discriminator is used in like once in the translation phase and once after the segmentation phase also, just to add another further level of security. And when the aim is of course to fool the discriminators, that is these generators as well as each of these generators try to fool the corresponding discriminators, and the model itself tries to fool this domain discriminator, and the loss function is defined accordingly. Like there is the GAN loss, the reconstruction loss, then for each like for the source as well as the target domain, there are all these loss functions and so on, which will so like basically they indicate how good the segmentation has been and all that. So, so we'll not go into the details of all these things. This is what some of the results look like. So we have like for example, these are some ground truth images. This is one image from the WorldView dataset, and this is another image from the Deep Globe dataset. And then after segmentation, this is so like here you can see like these are basically on what we have on the left hand side. These are the ground truths, the ground truth segmentations, and these are the segmentations which we get like after the like using the model. So we can see that in some cases the segmentation results which we get like agrees with the ground truth, in other cases it does not. Next, like we move on to another paper. Here this is based on the triplet adversarial domain adaptation for pixel level classification of VHR, that is very high resolution remote sensing images. So here this is also, like we can say, this is also related to the image segmentation only. They are doing pixel level classification, that is to say each pixel in the image is to be classified into one of different classes. So for this, once again they use this kind of a like a deep learning framework. So like here they have so there are two image sources, or let us I mean there are, let's say there are two so images from the source domain and there is a target image, and then like there is this neural network which maps all of them to these maps, to the prediction maps. So these are the source prediction maps and the target prediction maps. And next the aim here is like the source image is of course compared to the ground truth, and like we get the some kind of segmentation error, that is so this basically it can the map which I am talking, the prediction map which I am talking about is basically segmentation. So this is a segmented image. So that the source segmented image is compared with the source ground truth and we get the segmentation error. Similarly, the target segmented image, they are also mapped to the or they are compared with the target ground truth, and then after that and some error is obtained based on that also. Now for this part, here what happens is basically the alignment, the domain alignment. The source domain images, I mean the source domain image after segmentation and the target domain image after segmentation, like basically like an alignment is done between them using this neural network. Their labels are also aligned, and and accordingly we get this kind of loss. And we so this is again so you can say this is once again this is adversarially trained in the same way as we were talking about earlier, and that is the aim of one is to fool the other and so on. And yeah, so basically what this is trying to do is this is trying to get the source segmented image and the target segmented image, and just trying to map or trying to see which, or trying to distinguish which is the source and which is the source domain and which is the target domain, and accordingly it is trained. So so finally we get the you can say the result is that the target image is all, once this network has been properly trained, the outcome will be that the target image will be segmented so accurately as to as the source images themselves. Now for the source images, of course we have the ground truth, so we can hope that the source images are going to be segmented perfectly. Now the target images are also going to be segmented with equal efficiency, even though it has not been trained with the target ground truth images. So note that here there are source ground truth images are present, but no target ground truth. Instead we have the target pseudo levels, which are by pseudo levels I mean the levels which are obtained from the network itself, and so on and so forth. So the basic idea here is as follows. So this part is shown in a bit more detail here. So so this is the network structure for the proposed domain similarity discriminator. This part is called the domain similarity discriminator. What it tries to do is it takes the segmented target image and the segmented source image and tries to find the difference or discriminate between them. So the source, the two maps, both of them are passed through the neural network of the same way, using having shared weights, like there are 4 convolutional layers which can be called as domain feature extractors, and like finally they like this here the two things are somehow they are compared with each other as the and yes so and so on. So the basic idea behind this approach is that, like let us say so let us say that there are 2 distributions of the features. This is the feature distribution in the, so let us for example assume that the features are just one dimension. So in the in the source domain, this is the what the feature distribution looks like, and in the target domain this is how it looks. So clearly there is some mismatch between them. Now one way we can do is we can just shift the source domain to the target domain, as we had been trying to do in the previous Coral and such approaches. So that's what we are trying this is shown here, that is this data set, like this distribution is somehow like it is preserved, but it is translated to closer to the target distribution, right. But in this case it's like both the source and the target, they are both are being translated to some kind of a common distribution. So this is what is actually achieved by the, or attempted to be achieved by this kind of a by this approach, unlike say some of the earlier approaches like Coral. Here is one more application here. Here the idea is the so some of the other papers which we are discussing, like they are from different cities or from different satellites and here and so on. In this case it's like there are two different image sources which might be using different technologies for sensing. So one is the Landsat and the other is Proba, and the aim here is to align the images obtained from both the sources. This time also so these are some of the specifications of the images obtained from the two cases. So like here some of the spectral bands from the Landsat, they overlap with the Proba, and then so basically for that part now for the now to as pre-processing, some amount of upscaling is done. The also the ground truths of the Landsat image, they are also upscaled to the other image, to the Proba image, because this Landsat this has a resolution of that is, so I am sorry, the Landsat has higher resolution, that is about 30 meters per pixel, while Proba has lower resolution, so that is about 333 meters per pixel. So some kind of upscaling or coarsening of the Landsat images has to be done, so that and there the ground truth also have to be upscaled accordingly. So for that some kind of bicubic interpolation is used, and then the so basically we get for every region we get 2 images, one from the Landsat and one from the Proba, and then the idea is to like so these 2 images are first upscaled and like brought to the common resolution and so on. After that, like both are fed into a neural network to obtain which is again based on this the concept of generative adversarial network with a discriminative and generative component, with the result being that we get the some kind of a common representation which cannot be distinguished either from either of the domains. And finally we come to one last application, so advancing radar nowcasting through deep transfer learning. So here so we have already discussed in some of the previous lectures that how these radar images can be used for nowcasting of rainfall and like other like extreme weather phenomena, storms and so on. So the idea here is that like there is this now like a radar based nowcasting algorithm, but that is trained on the radar imagery obtained from one region, namely Beijing in China, and now they want to like map it to a different region. So for that they once again use the same idea of domain adaptation. So so this is the original thing, the original algorithm which so there are input images coming in from the radar, so they undergo a sequence of convolution and pooling steps as happens in a normal CNN, and so the output in this case is just binary. The aim is to just predict after a certain number. So this, let us say these images were acquired at a particular time t. The aim is after a time window, will an extreme event happen or not. So that's a binary classification problem. So accordingly the network is trained. Now the same network is going to be deployed in the target domain also. However, it will be like most of the like for deployment in the target region, most of the things will remain, the weights etc. will be shared. It's not going to be a retraining or anything. Only some in the last two layers there might be some reorientation of the weights, and that will be done according to this loss function. So again, what this loss function does is it simply maps the the source images to the the source radar images to the target radar images based on their feature representation. These feature representations are obtained from the neural network itself, from the first few convolutional. So what this phi basically means is the feature maps obtained from the convolution layer. So like what they are doing is they are mapping the feature space of the source images to the feature space of the target images, and then the so this is an extra loss function which they are adding apart from the usual classification loss function. And these two fully connected layers, their weights are going to be tuned so as to minimize this loss function, so that the features of the target domain are mapped to the features of the source domain. And then once this is achieved, then this model can be deployed in the target domain also with equal efficiency as the source domain. So these are the different papers that we covered today. So this brings us to the end of module 4, and from next lecture we will begin module 5. So till then, bye.